Hi, my name's Kim J and I'm a visually impaired chef and I'm also a volunteer for RNIB. Now we're all stuck in isolation, we're all struggling with wondering what to make. So today I'm going to make slow cooked pork. Now you start off with making a marinate which you put onto the pork and you leave in the fridge overnight. Now what you're going to need for this dish is approximately 1.5 to 3 kilograms of pork shoulder with the fat on, half a teaspoon of chili powder. You're going to need sea salt, 1 teaspoon of barbecue powder, 3 teaspoons of smoked paprika, 1 teaspoon of mustard powder, a teaspoon of black treacle, 2 teaspoons of cider vinegar, 1 teaspoon of cumin powder and 100 ml of cider. And those are the ingredients you're going to need to make this dish. Now we're going to make the marinade for this pork dish. Very easy. Approximately 1/4 teaspoon of chili powder. Now if you don't like the heat, that's fine, just get rid of the chili powder. You're going to need a teaspoon of the barbecue powder, 2 teaspoons of smoked paprika, a teaspoon of mustard powder. Again, if you're not keen on too much heat, just literally put a pinch of it. A teaspoon of the black treacle, and 2 teaspoons of the cider vinegar. Now this dish is a lovely blend of the Eastern, it's sweet, it's sour with a bit of kick in it. Now I'm going to put a teaspoon of the cumin powder. I've done all that and I'm now just going to mix it together until it becomes a thick, gloopy, paste-like texture. And as you mix it, you can actually, it activates all the spices and you can smell the sugar from the treacle and the cumin and the chili and the smoked paprika. Putting the mixture that you've made to one side, I've got the pork joint here. Now, pork shoulder is a piece of meat which is rolled up and the butcher has tied it up with string. You need to try and keep that string on because when it cooks, it will keep the meat together. Now, getting a sharp knife, you want to score the fat, just the fat. And scoring is literally cutting into the fat at the top and you can feel the thick layer of fat on top of the meat, but not cutting all the way through. So it's just little scoring into the top of the fat. And what we'll be doing later on is we're going to be rubbing salt into that fat and it allows it to become crispy. Now here comes a fun bit. It's a bit that I always like. If you've got children, they'll probably enjoy doing this just as much. Now what you need is that mixture that you've made with the treacle and the spices. You want to rub it into the meat, not the fat, just the meat. Again, you can tell which is the fat because it's like a thick, smooth layer. Rub it in and massage it into the flesh. And that, whilst it's being marinated, will soak into the flesh and it'll flavour that meat. I always enjoy marinating like this because it's a hands-on thing, it's very tactile and really enjoyable to do. And there you go. Spices are all rubbed in, I've massaged it in, and what I'm now going to do is I'm going to put this into a dish, put cling film on it and leave it in the fridge for 24 hours. Now in that time period, those spices are going to soak into that flesh. It's going to make it even more tender and it'll make it extremely flavoursome. It's the next day and our pork joint has been in the fridge for 24 hours. Now what we're going to now do is I've put the joint onto a plate with the fat side up and the meat down. I have some table salt here, a mixture of table salt and rock salt. If you don't have rock salt, don't worry, use table salt. And what you now do is you sprinkle it on top of the fat and you rub it in. Now, some of you, I'd imagine, are asking, well, why didn't you put the salt in on yesterday when I was marinating? Now, salt cures meat. So if you put salt onto any kind of red meat and leave it, what it does, it literally takes out the moisture from the joint and the meat, which is not what we want to do. So we put it on just before we're about to cook it, and that way your meat is tender, it is moist, and it's all those things. Right, as you can see, I'm not just sprinkling the salt on the fat, I'm rubbing it in and rubbing it into those skewers that we made yesterday. Now what I've got here is a large roasting pan that has a tray on top. It's got to be big enough to take your pork shoulder. I've also got a jug that's got approximately 300 ml of water in it and approximately 100 ml of the cider. Now what we're going to do is pour that liquid into the tray, and that will help to keep the joint tender. It'll steam the joint as well as roasting it in the oven. With that done, I'm now going to put the joint on top of the wire rack and cover it with foil. Now make sure the foil surrounds all of it and literally has a tight sort of seal around the edges. This will help the steam to keep within that foil paper. And once I've done that, I'm going to put it into the oven at 140 degrees C for approximately 4 hours. And I will check at the 3-hour mark to see how it's going. But it will be in the oven for at least 4 to 5 hours. The pork has been in the oven for 3 hours. It's not done yet, but what we need to do is very gently take the foil paper off a little and add some more of the liquid. And what you'll find is you've got fat that's at the bottom, which you want to keep in there. Put a little bit more liquid in. Again, cover it up and put it back into the oven. Now we're going to put it back into the oven for approximately another hour and we will check it again. Now, just doing that, what you get is a smell. It is sweet. It is you can smell the cider, which is now infused into that pork, and it will carry on doing that. So that is now going back into the oven. The pork has just come out of the oven, so now at this stage I'm going to take off the foil paper, put a tiny bit more liquid in there. You don't want as much as that much, just enough for it to deglaze the pan, and it now goes back into the oven at 180 degrees C for 45 minutes. I've just pulled the pork out of the oven. It's been in there for 40 to 45 minutes. Now for those of you that have got colour, it is this rich golden brown on top where the fat is. Now if I tap it with a knife, you can hear it is crisp, perfect crackling, and that's thanks to the salt that we rubbed in there. Now what you have at the bottom of the roasting dish is the juices, which is a combination of the fat and the cider which is condensed down. Now don't want to throw that away, we don't waste anything if we can help it. I'm going to use that with some more cider to make a jus which you can serve with this pork dish. Now I'm going to let this piece of pork rest for at least 20 minutes, at which point I will cut the string off, carve it up and serve it up. And I have to say guys, this smells amazing. You can smell the sweetness, you can smell the hint of cumin and mustard that's just coming through together with that cider. It is amazing. I've taken the liquid that was in the bottom of the roasting dish and put it into a measuring jug. Now for those of you that have sight, you'll find that you have a fat layer at the top and another layer at the bottom. Now what we're going to do is we're going to sieve that liquid. I would literally sieve about half of that liquid. The fat will go in will be the one that you've sieved, and what you're left with is a mixture of fat and liquid. Now on the hob I've got a saucepan, and with that third of the mixture that was left remaining when we were trying to sieve, I put into the saucepan. Now into there I'm also going to put about 50 to 100 mils of cider, and I'm going to let that boil down. Now jus is basically a sauce, and what we're going to do is just boil it down, and it'll be slightly sweet because it's got the cider in it, and it will be packed full of flavour because of the liquid that we've got from the roasting dish, and utterly delicious. Right, I've boiled this liquid down for about 7 minutes, and it is quite condensed, and when you stir it, it feels syrupy, and that's all that sweetness from the cider and the treacle that it's got there. Now once it has condensed to that point, you then put it into a sauce boat and you sprinkle a little bit on your pork when you eat it. There we have it, the perfect slow cooked pork, sweet with crispy crackling and a lovely cider jus to go on the side. All that's left is to cut off that string and to serve with seasonable vegetables and potatoes. And what could be perfect as a Sunday roast, or even at any time. Now you have a recipe for a great dish. But when you're in the kitchen, there are certain safety guides and rules that you should adhere to, and which keeps you safe. Now, one of the things that I do before I start cooking is I make sure that I've got shoes on that are sturdy with good grips. I make sure that there's nothing on the floor that I can trip over, and there are no spillages or liquid or condensation on the floor that makes it a bit of a hazard. Now, before cooking, the first thing that you do, as we all know, is wash our hands thoroughly. And especially when you're dealing with raw meat at every stage, wash your hands thoroughly. It stops cross-contamination. It keeps you and your family safe. When you're using the oven and the hob, know your oven and hob really well. Now, I use tactile markings so that I know exactly what temperature to put the oven on and what setting, so that I've not put the grill on when I should be putting the oven on. Now, with the hob, whenever you're sort of putting anything on the hob, make sure the handle is not sticking out. Now, I like to keep the handle at approximately 10 to 12. And the reason for that is it's not near enough to the unit for you to accidentally knock it off. It is not over another hob which may be on, so the handle's getting hot. So this is the safest position. Now, if you're boiling anything, be very, very careful. Don't fill the pan up too much. And if possible, use the boiler alert, which tells you when that liquid is bubbling away and it's hot, and it keeps you safe. If you're not comfortable with the hob and the oven, use the microwave whenever you can. It's a lot safer. And every time you are taking things out of the oven or from the microwave, because remember, plates and dishes get extremely hot in the microwave, use oven gloves. Now, I like to use thermal oven gloves. They're a lot safer. Don't be tempted to use tea towels or anything else. And they literally go to extreme temperatures, so you're very safe with them. Whenever you cut any food in the kitchen, use safe cutting methods. Keep the blade away from your fingers, so set it a couple of millimeters away from your fingers, and that way you're safe all the time. Now, if you're not confident with a knife, you can use appliances like food processors. Make sure you know how they work properly, and keep safe. And if you're still not confident, ask somebody else to do it. It is better to be safe than have an injury. If you have any cuts or you cut yourself whilst you're in the kitchen, put a plaster on it. And if you have a burn, run it under cold water. And if it's bad, you seek medical advice straight away. Whenever you cook meat, always ensure that the meat is thoroughly cooked, because you know, raw meat will give you food poisoning. Now, the best optimum temperature to cook meat is between 66 degrees and 73 degrees. Use a food thermometer if you're not too sure. They do have talking food thermometers, which you can get quite easily. And you store the meat as soon as you can. As soon as it's cooled down, store it straight away in the fridge and read the advice on storage on the labels.